For a lot of folks, the most challenging part of planning a Disney World vacation is choosing the perfect resort hotel to stay at. Last year, we did a video where we compared all the different value resorts at Walt Disney World and crowned a winner. And we said in that video, we were gonna come back and do the same thing for moderates and deluxe resorts. Well, my friends, today is the day. We're gonna hit every single moderate resort hotel here at Walt Disney World. And by the end of this video, we are gonna crown the winner. We got a lot of resorts to cover, so let's get to it. Hi ho everybody, this is Rob with Ear Scouts coming to you from Disney's Caribbean Beach Resort. We're here right now because this is the original moderate resort here at Walt Disney World. It was the first one to open way back in 1988. There have definitely been a lot of upgrades made to this resort over the years that make it an even better place to stay than ever. But there are also a lot of other moderate resorts that have been added to the lineup since 1988. And with so many resorts to choose from, how do you pick the one that is perfect for you and your family? Well, in today's video, we're gonna break it all down. We're gonna show you every resort. We're gonna talk about who has the best rooms, the best dining, the best transportation, whatever it is that is most important to you, we're gonna cover it in today's video and help you pick the perfect Disney World Resort hotel for your next vacation. As I mentioned at the top of this video, last year we did the same thing for all the different value resorts here at Walt Disney World. We'll put a link to that video in the description down below if you want to check it out. But let's talk for a second about what separates value resorts from moderate resorts, and then what separates moderate from deluxe resorts, the best of the best. Disney definitely does some little subtle things to differentiate these different classes. So when you step up from value to moderate, some of the things you'll find are the rooms are a little bit bigger, a little bit nicer. Maybe there's some better furnishings in the rooms. You'll also find that the grounds are more scenic than the ones you'll find over at the value resorts. They don't often have quite as much over-the-top Disney theming as you find at the value resorts. These are a little bit more refined. They kind of have characters all their own. In some cases, they have elaborate backstories all their own. There are also some really subtle differences that you probably wouldn't even notice if you weren't paying attention. One of those things is the pools at these resorts. While all the pools at Disney resorts are great, the ones at value resorts don't ever have water slides. So when you get to moderate and deluxe resorts, you're going to start to see more water features like water slides added to the pools. When it comes to dining, the moderate resorts will typically add in some table service dining options, whereas at value resorts, it's pretty much all quick service. Here at moderate resorts, you're gonna get places like Sebastian's Bistro, all the way up to really fine dining places like we'll see later at Coronado Springs. And then there are some really subtle things that you wouldn't notice unless you were paying close attention. My favorite of these is actually related to coffee. So when you get coffee at a value resort, your only creamer option is going to be those little fake creamers. It's not real milk, you know, the ones that can sit out unrefrigerated. That's your creamer option. Once you get to a moderate resort, you're going to find a little carafe of whole milk is put out for you to use in addition to the fake creamers. And then when you get to a deluxe resort, there will be the fake creamers, there will be the whole milk, and then there will be a carafe of half and half. So there's just these little things that Disney does that makes each resort tier a little bit nicer than the one before it. Some of them probably matter a lot to you, others, like the creamer, maybe don't matter so much. Quick inside tip, if you are staying at a resort that doesn't have half and half out, you can usually go to the bakery section at the quick service. If they do the specialty coffees, they often have half and half behind the counter and they can give you some for your coffee. For me though, I think the biggest thing that differentiates moderate and deluxe resorts from value is just the feeling you get when you're at the resort. They just feel a little bit more luxury. There's really beautiful scenic spots to hang out in. Right now, I am on Caribbean Key. This is a little island that Disney added at the center of Caribbean Beach Resort. They have little secluded cabanas where you can relax and look out over the bay. They've got some kids' play areas here. It's just a fun little escape from the hustle and bustle of the resort. And you'll find little getaways like this at most of the moderate and deluxe resorts. As you may have guessed from the name, Caribbean Beach is themed to the islands of the Caribbean. In fact, all the different areas of hotel rooms is named after a different Caribbean nation. They're also color-coded, but beyond that, there's not a lot that differentiates them. In terms of the rooms that you want when you stay here, you usually want the ones that are going to be closest either to Old Port Royal, which is the main lobby area where you're going to find restaurants and the main pool and all that fun stuff, or you're probably going to want to be near one of the Skyliner stations, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. As far as the rooms go here at Caribbean Beach, this is the oldest of the moderate resorts. I do think the rooms here are showing their age a little bit. They're not quite as nice as the other moderate resorts we're going to show you today. They did recently do what Disney calls a soft goods refurbishment, which basically means they changed the drapes, they changed little things like paint colors, but they didn't do a deep dive renovation like redoing the furnishings or maybe even reimagining the themes of the rooms. So I would say this hotel, of all the ones we're going to see today, probably has rooms that are most in need of an update. While Disney hasn't upgraded the rooms quite as much as we would like, they did make one really massive upgrade to this resort in 2019 that is probably the real reason you're going to consider staying here, and that is the addition of the Skyliner. The Skyliner is my favorite form of Disney transportation. It connects you to two different parks. You can get to Hollywood Studios or Epcot by the Skyliner, and best of all, Caribbean Beach is the hub. So with any other resort on the Skyliner route, you're going to have to transfer at Caribbean Beach to get where you're going. But if you're at Caribbean Beach, you got a direct shot to either of those parks, or to head over to Art of Animation or Pop Century if you're headed to those resorts. If you're thinking of your Disney World Resort Hotel as mainly a convenient place to sleep where you have easy access to the parks, maybe you want to do a little bit of fine dining while you're here, then yes, this resort is a great option. And that dining bit is a really huge deal at this resort. Not only does it have one of the best quick service restaurants on property, I love Centertown Market. They have some delicious Caribbean inspired dishes. There's the mixed grill platter that has the best chicken I've had at any quick service at Disney World. This chicken is to die for. It's got this very sort of citrusy marinade on it. That one also comes with some delicious grilled vegetables, some ribs, some smoked sausage. All of it is delicious. They've also got a really delicious rice dish that I'm not going to try to pronounce. We'll just put the name on the screen when we show you the dish. All the food I've had there has been really good, and it's actually a really good value as well. Next door, you're going to find Banana Cabana. This is one of the best pool bars at Disney World. This is really a full-service restaurant that just happens to be right next to the pool. A lot of the pool bars are more like a little walk-up window, and you're going to get something that kind of came out of one of those quick reheat ovens. This is a real restaurant. In fact, I think they use the same kitchen as Sebastian's. So you're getting really good food there and really delicious drinks. I especially recommend the frozen drinks on the menu. They are delicious. Next to the Banana Cabana, you're gonna find Sebastian's, named after everyone's favorite crab from The Little Mermaid. I think the most interesting thing about Sebastian's, other than the food's very good, the soundtrack. They have got a soundtrack that plays on a loop of Sebastian singing all kinds of different songs. I think he covers Bob Marley at one point, but it is really funny to hear all these songs that you know and love sung by a voice that you know and love, Sebastian from The Little Mermaid. My favorite food items there are the bread that comes out at the beginning of your meal is heavenly. Also, the bread pudding that comes out for dessert is really good as well. You can order that same bread pudding next door at Banana Cabana if you're not doing a full meal at Sebastian's, and I highly recommend trying it before you leave this resort. While you can order specific entrees at Sebastian's, most people go for the Taste of the Caribbean. This is kind of like the meal you get at Ohana if you've ever eaten there, where they just keep bringing you out more and more food. Whatever it is you want more of, they'll bring it out. The platter includes a really delicious citrus braised chicken. There's some mojo pork on there. There's some chili rub beef and sustainable fish. There's a lot of different options. They've also got, I think, some vegetable curry comes on the side with that and some nice vegetables. It's a delightful meal, and you'll definitely get your money's worth because they're going to keep bringing you food until you tell them to stop. There's also another quick service that's on the other end of the resort called Spyglass Grill. That one's not one of our favorites. I'd say you probably only want to get something there if you just happen to be way on that side of the resort. And that is an important thing I should point out. This resort is massive. It takes a really long time to walk from one end to the other. So which room you get, which of these nation buildings you're staying in does matter a lot at this resort, because you really want to pay attention and request a building that's close to what's important to you. And for most people, that's going to be this main area, Old Port Royale, where all those restaurants are. Before we finish on dining though, there are two more really important things to know about Caribbean Beach. Number one, over by the Skyliner station, you're going to find an actual full-fledged Joffrey's. And let me tell you, for coffee lovers like me, that is a really big deal to have a real Joffrey's on site at your hotel. The other really great thing about this resort for foodies is the Riviera is essentially part of your resort. If you're walking around Barefoot Bay, around the different resort buildings of this hotel, one of those buildings basically is the Riviera. They kind of carved out part of this resort to build the Riviera. And at the Riviera, you're gonna find some amazing dining options, including a favorite, Topolino's Terrace. That's on the top floor of the Riviera, and at breakfast, it is an adorable character dining meal that you should definitely do if you're staying either here or over at the Riviera. Back at Old Port Royale, you're also going to find one of the best pools at all the different moderate resorts. I love this one. It's kind of themed like Pirates of the Caribbean. It's definitely got a pirate's vibe to it. It's modeled after an old Spanish fort that you might find on one of these Caribbean islands. If you think your kids are going to want to spend a lot of time at the pool, this is one you should probably put on your list to consider. So when we were rating the different value resorts, one of the things we rated on was the best pool, but here's a key difference with the moderates. Moderates are about more than just the pools. Disney has added a lot of other recreation activities in addition to the pools that you really should consider when you're picking a resort at this or the deluxe level. In addition to the beautiful pool and Caribbean Key that we talked about, they've also added some lovely beaches along Barefoot Bay where you can relax in a hammock and soak up some sun. You can also rent a boat at the marina and actually set sail on Barefoot Bay. You can even fish here if you like. One of my favorite things to do when I'm here though is to just hop on the Skyliner. It is a really beautiful view of Disney World. Even if you're not going somewhere, I just like to get on the Skyliner and ride it like a ride. As a matter of fact, we're about to hop on the Skyliner now to head off to our next resort, but first I do want to talk about one last unique thing about this property, and that is the gift shop. Now, the gift shop is a nice gift shop. It's a little bit bigger than the ones you find at the value resorts, but what I love about it are the unique items that they sell. You'll find some things that are exclusive to Caribbean Beach, but definitely the coolest thing you can buy here is a coconut postcard. So this is an actual coconut that has been turned into a postcard that Disney will in fact mail for you to anywhere in the United States. This is an actual legit postcard you can mail. I did this once for a friend of mine and it was so funny. He sent me a picture of the coconut in his mailbox when it arrived. He got such a kick out of it. This is one of those things that they do run out of a lot. It's very popular, so there's a chance it won't be here when you come to visit, but always check the gift shop and see if they have the coconut postcards in stock, because it is a really cool and unique souvenir from this resort. So now we are headed off to our next resort, and we're going to take the Skyliner actually over to Hollywood Studios, and then we'll take a bus from Hollywood Studios to our next resort. In most cases, you cannot take transportation directly from one resort to another. You'll either have to go to one of the parks or Disney Springs and then transfer there to the resort you're heading to. There are exceptions to that, but in most cases, that's how you have to do it. So let's jump aboard the most scenic form of Disney transportation, and then I'll meet you guys at our next resort, Port Orleans. 2 years years after opening their first ever moderate resort, Disney followed up with Port Orleans French Quarter. At this point, it is 1991. This is the beginning of what I like to call the High Eisner era, and it's the period that Eisner himself referred to as the Disney decade. He had big plans and a grand vision, especially as it related to Disney World and Disney parks around the world. Here at Disney World, he envisioned lots of grand new resorts, including the Grand Floridian, which came on board around this time. As you probably can already tell from the name, Port Orleans celebrates the great food, music, culture, and architecture of New Orleans. It is a super fun place to stay by design, and it was just phase one of a much larger vision that we're actually going to see as we explore this resort and head into the next one. What I love most about the High Eisner era of Disney is there was this refocus on what Disney did best in Eisner's opinion, and that was telling stories. They didn't just open a resort. Every resort they opened had an elaborate backstory that was created by Imagineers, and they are truly inventive and unique. Back in the day when they opened, you would have known the full story because they gave out newspapers that had kind of an account of the founding of the place where you were staying. They did that here. They also did that over at Riverside when that one opened. It was originally called Dixie Landings, and they also did it at the first DVC resort, Old Key West. We actually made a whole video about the story behind Old Key West. We'll put a link to it in the description down below if you'd like to check that out. But as for the story of this resort, it is really elaborate. It involves Louis XIV and exploration of the New World. Specifically, it is the story of two explorers of the New World, two adventurers. One is Stéphane Michel d'Or, who was a winemaker in France. The other is a Scottish expat by the name of John Lean. And that, of course, is how this resort got its name, Port Orleans. I know you were thinking it's because of New Orleans. No. It's because of Stéphane Michel d'Or and John Lean. I like to think of Port Orleans French Quarter and Riverside as really almost being the same resort. They are connected by a walkway. It's very easy to get from one to the other. They also have riverboats that will take you from one to the other. When you stay at one of these resorts, you're actually welcome to use the amenities of both of them. They're really kind of considered part of the same family. So if you want to enjoy the pool here one day and then take a stroll over and try out the one at Port Orleans Riverside, you're welcome to do that. For that reason, I feel like staying at Port Orleans is almost like getting two resorts in one. And you can choose what kind of vibe you want by picking either this resort, which is more of a city vibe, or if you want a more laid back or sophisticated vibe, you can head over to Riverside, where you can stay either in Magnolia Bend or the Alligator Bayou. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start by giving French Quarter its due, and man, there is a lot to love about this resort. This is one of the most beautiful resorts that Disney had built to date. It's kind of surprising that this was considered a moderate resort when it opened, because the grounds are among the most beautiful of any of the Disney resorts at that time. The resort is situated along the picturesque Sassagoula River that actually takes you to Disney Springs, as well as to Old Key West and Port Orleans or Riverside. Sassagoula is the Native American name for the Mississippi River, so it's kind of a nod to that history in that part of the country. My favorite rooms at this resort are the ones that are corner view rooms with a water view. Pay a little extra and spring for those water view rooms. It really is beautiful. Just kind of look out your window and see the boats going down the Sassagoula River. As with Caribbean Beach, the rooms here are a solid upgrade from what you found at the value resorts, although I actually like these way more than I do the ones over at Caribbean Beach. They've been renovated multiple times since this resort opened, and I really love where they've landed with them. Aside from the beautiful views, I really love the updated furnishings in these rooms. It feels a lot nicer and classier than what you find over at Caribbean Beach. I also just feel like these rooms are somehow brighter. Whenever I'm in those Caribbean Beach rooms, it all just feels a little bit dark for some reason, but these rooms have lots of light height. There are some very subtle Disney touches in this room. You'll find nods to the Princess and the Frog and a hidden Mickey here and there, but on the whole, it's just a sophisticated feeling room. It feels like an upscale hotel room. It's very nice. It's not as nice as what you'll find at the deluxe resorts, but as moderates go, this is one of my favorites in terms of the quality of the rooms. Another thing I really love about this particular resort is how compact it is. As you saw at Caribbean Beach, some of these moderates can be sprawling resorts where it takes a long time to get from one end to the other, but French Quarter in particular has a very small footprint, and the lobby is right kind of in the center. So even if you're at the room that's farthest away from the lobby, it's not a super long hike, which a lot of folks appreciate. Another nice perk for folks concerned about accessibility is because these buildings are 3 stories tall, Disney did add in elevators. So that's a huge help for folks who have issues using the stairs. Probably the number one thing you're going to hear about French Quarter, this is the one place in all of Walt Disney World where you can get those legendary Mickey-shaped beignets, and they are as good as you have heard. They are one of my favorite desserts on property. They have specialty beignets there as well, including ones that are filled with booze, but in my opinion, you can't improve on the classic. Those Mickey-shaped beignets with dipping sauces are so good. If you want to find those beignets, you're going to head into Scat Cat Cafe or into the Scat Cat Club, which opens later at night. Scat Cat Club is a table service spot where it's more of a lounge vibe. They have live jazz music certain nights. And then Scat Cat's Cafe is more of a coffee shop vibe. It's really almost an extension of the lobby. You just wait in line, order your beignets, and they'll call your name when they're ready. While there may not be a traditional table service restaurant in the way that you'll get at the other moderate resorts, there is a lovely little quick service spot. So let's head over and check it out right now. As you approach the lobby, you're going to hear Dixieland jazz filling the air. You're going to smell those beignets, the gumbo, the jambalaya, all those classic flavors of New Orleans wafting in the air. Here at Sassagoula Floatworks and Food Factory, the specialties are going to be New Orleans favorites like po' boys, jambalaya, gumbo. I'm not going to say it's the best jambalaya or gumbo you're ever going to have, but it's pretty good. When it comes to recreation, probably the centerpiece is going to be the gorgeous pool right here behind me. As you approach the pool, you're going to see these adorable alligator characters playing Dixieland jazz. And then when you come in, it is like a pool party meets a Mardi Gras party. It is so beautiful and inventive. I love the bright colors. I love the water effects. Most of all, I love the amazing dragon that spans the entire pool and also serves as the water slide. It's a really beautiful and inventive pool design, and next door you're going to find an elaborate splash pad that I guarantee your kids are going to love. Also, in terms of recreation, I would consider the live jazz over at Scat Cats to be a big plus to this resort. That's obviously only going to be on select nights. You'll want to check with the lobby or in the app when you come to know what nights that's going on, but that's a great evening activity. But probably my favorite recreation activity here is actually the transportation. I love the boats that take you up and down the Sassagoula River. They can take you to Port Orleans Riverside, to Disney Springs, or you can transfer and go over to Old Key West. Unfortunately, as we're making this video, we're having a little bit of a drought here in Orlando, so the river level at the Sassagoula is way too low for them to safely run the boats. But that just means we're going to take a lovely stroll over to our next resort, Riverside, instead of taking the boat, and that gives me an opportunity to let you know exactly how long it takes for you to walk from one lobby to the other. Let's go do it. I absolutely love this walk between French Quarter and Riverside. And this is actually the perfect time for me to share with you a little bit of the story of the next resort we're visiting, because it really does begin with folks going down the Sassagoula River. While Port Orleans became a bustling town, some folks wanted a quieter life. So a group of hunters and trappers decided to travel up the Sassagoula River, and they made camp in an area that we now know as Alligator Bayou. But Alligator Bayou is only one part of the Port Orleans Riverside story. As I'm sure you're going to notice as we come in, there's some stately homes and mansions on the other side of the river. That's another part of the story. Also, there's an island at the center. The Sassagoula River kind of forks and goes around an island known as Old Man Island. You can tell from that name, there's going to be a good story there. And of course, there's sort of the main town center where you're going to find the lobby, the restaurants, all the fun stuff to do, and that is Riverside itself. We're going to do a whole video all about the backstory of this place. We'll probably put it up over on our Patreon channel, just because I really want to make it. I love the story here. If you want to see that video, head over to our Patreon channel, patreon.com/earscouts, because that's where it's eventually going to end up. Well, that was a lovely and leisurely 10-minute walk from resort lobby to resort lobby. Having said that, these resorts are right next to each other. So if you're at the edge of one resort, it's basically you go right over a bridge and you're at the next resort. For some reason, I think people have the idea that these resorts are really far apart. I guess because there's a boat that takes you between them, but really it's a pretty quick stroll. We did it in 10, but if you were walking fast, you could probably do it in about 7. So right behind me is the Riverside complex, where you're gonna find shopping, dining, riverboat cruises, carriage rides, and some of the best entertainment at all of the Disney resorts. Across the river, you'll find Magnolia Bend and its stately gardens and elegant guest rooms. On the other side of Riverside, you can take this bridge over to Old Man Island, where you can do some fishing, some swimming, and some marshmallow roasting. And if you keep following the river, you'll come to Alligator Bayou with its rustic rooms for larger families and winding walkways through the picturesque swamp. Well, let's start here at Riverside, where you're going to find the old mill that's been converted to the quick service restaurant for this resort. Appropriately enough, it is called the Riverside Mill Food Court. Let's head inside and check it out. While the food here is mostly the same stuff that you find next door over at French Quarter, this is a much larger space, and you have beautiful views of the river and the massive water wheel. I think the theming in this quick service is among the best at all the different Disney resorts. That water wheel is a showstopper. Next door is Boatwrights, where it seems like they're building a giant ship by day, and then at night they turn the whole place into a table service restaurant where you eat under the hull of the unfinished ship. As far as the food goes, the star of the show is definitely the pimento cheese fritters. Those things are heavenly. You gotta get those if you come. Probably the food item they're most known for, though, is their Taste of the Bayou menu. This is gonna be a platter that's gonna have ribs and Cajun chicken and smoked sausage and barbecue brisket. There's gonna be all the fixins, and they'll just keep bringing out for you more and more whichever things that you want. Next to Boatwrights is the River Roost, where you can find some tasty spirits and light bites from next door, but the real reason you wanna take up roost here is to see a true Disney legend, Yeehaw Bob.
Like a song, you started small, then it grew.
Yeehaw Bob has been a fixture at Riverside for decades, and definitely when you're checking in, the first thing you want to do is find out what nights Yeehaw Bob is playing and put it in your itinerary. This is one show you do not want to miss. Another reason we love Riverside is Fulton's General Store. Not only is this one of the biggest gift shops on property, you can find unique items here that you can only get at Port Orleans. Most importantly, however, this is also one of the only gift shops on property that actually has its own animatronics. The other gift shop back at French Quarter also has a lot of those same unique Port Orleans items, but it's a lot smaller and there are no animatronic ducks involved. So I think the winner is Fulton's General Store. Outside along the river, you can take a romantic carriage ride along the riverbanks of Magnolia Bend, or you can actually rent your own fishing boat to take a fishing excursion down the Sassagoula River. This is also, of course, where you get on those river boats that take you to Disney Springs or some other resorts. I do recommend, however, if you want to rent one of these boats or you want to do that carriage ride, you'll want to reserve that in advance of your visit. And while we're on the subject of fishing, let's head over the bridge to Old Man Island. That's where you're going to find the legendary fishing hole, as well as a pretty fun swimming hole and a place to roast some marshmallows. Let's go check it out. Old Man Island is definitely the most peaceful part of this resort. Well, other than the giant pool complex, that gets pretty rowdy, but everywhere else on Old Man Island is just a great place to commune with nature. You can go fishing here at the fishing hole. There's a little campfire site where they have the evening campfires. One of my favorite things to do here is just to relax on one of the hammocks here at Old Man Island and just enjoy the breeze and listen to the sounds of nature. And that relaxing peace and quiet is actually part of the origin story of Old Man Island. So according to legend, there were two brothers, Everett and Jonathan, who grew up in Port Orleans. And while Jonathan loved the hustle and bustle of the city, Everett wanted a quieter life. He liked to sort of keep to himself and whittle things out of wood. Well, when they came of age, Everett decided to set out on his own, and he found this lovely little island up the Sassagoula River where he decided he was going to make it his home. His favorite thing on this island was a majestic oak tree. The true story is this oak tree was not here when Disney built this resort. They actually had to move it. This was the largest live oak tree transplanting ever to be done in the history of oak tree transplanting. It took a crew of over 200 people working for 48 hours to get this tree transplanted from its original home, which was actually about 13 miles away. While it was certainly a lot of work, and I would imagine a pretty risky endeavor, it definitely paid off because that oak tree is the centerpiece of Old Man Island, and it is a stunning tree. Well, now let's head across the bridge here to Magnolia Bend. The story of Magnolia Bend actually involves Everett's brother, but we're not going to get into that in this video. You'll have to wait for the one we're going to do over at Patreon to find out how that story plays out. But for right now, let's talk about the guest rooms that you're going to find at Magnolia Bend, because there are actually 3 different types of guest rooms here at Port Orleans Riverside. There's the standard guest rooms, which are the majority of the guest rooms here at Magnolia Bend. They're themed like an old plantation house, a very stately home. The headboards are among the most beautiful headboards I've ever seen at any hotel, Disney or otherwise. They have these beautiful and detailed paintings on them. You'll also find lots of little details related to the Princess and the Frog, and even a hidden Mickey or two here and there. But if you want a really detailed room, you want to upgrade to one of the royal suites. Now, these rooms are fit for visiting royalty because the story behind them is that Tiana herself fashioned these rooms to be the place where she would host visiting princes and princesses who would come to visit, because of course Tiana is now a princess. She's married Naveen. She has to entertain royalty who come to her home here in the bayou of Louisiana. The details in these rooms though are incredible. It's kind of amazing that these rooms are part of a moderate resort. Believe it or not, they're really not that much more expensive than the traditional rooms here. So if you've got a prince or princess in your family that you'd like to give the royal treatment, these rooms are definitely worth checking out. But if you have more princes and princesses in your family that can comfortably fit in one of these royal suites, you might want to head on down to Alligator Bayou because they have some special rooms for bigger families. Let's head on down and check them out. The rooms here in Alligator Bayou are a lot more rustic feeling than the ones over at Magnolia Bend. They're what Disney calls fifth sleeper rooms, which means there's going to be 2 beds that sleep 2 people each, and then there's going to be a pull-down bed that sleeps a 5th person. So this is great for families where you got mom and dad and maybe 3 kids. This is the perfect room. These rooms are not much more expensive than the traditional rooms, so they represent a pretty great value for slightly larger families. Probably my favorite details in these rooms are the nods to Princess and the Frog. The curtain that separates the main room from the bathroom area has Prince Naveen and Princess Tiana in frog form looking up at Evangeline. But my favorite detail in these rooms, believe it or not, is in the bathroom. It's the shower curtain where you're gonna find Ray looking up at Evangeline, the love of his life. I love Ray so much. He is my favorite character, bar none, from Princess and the Frog. So I was so delighted to find a little tribute to him in these Fifth Sleeper rooms at Alligator Bayou. And now we are off to our next resort, Coronado Springs. Unfortunately, as we mentioned earlier, the river level is too low right now. They can't run those river boats, but this is a video, so there's no reason you guys can't take a lovely and scenic riverboat ride while I just drive over to Disney Springs. So I guess that's what we'll do. We'll use the magic of editing, and you guys can go float down the river, and I'll meet you at Coronado. Our next stop is the lovely Coronado Springs Resort, and this resort almost did not come to exist because originally the plan for this area was Disney was going to build what they were calling the Alpine Resort. They were developing Blizzard Beach at that time, their new water park, and they had this idea of building an alpine ski retreat style resort. And the key feature of this resort was that you were going to get access to a special chairlift that would take you from the resort to the top of the peak where you could ride down all the amazing water slides. Unfortunately, they kind of had to stop in their tracks when they were planning this out because it occurred to them that this new water park was going to need to be refurbished for a lengthy period of time every single year. And part of that refurbishment was going to mean draining everything and sandblasting the bottom of the pools, and it just was not going to be a great focal point for folks staying at that resort when that refurbishment had to happen each year. So Disney changed gears. They had another plan that was in motion. They needed a new convention center, and so they decided, you know what, let's just, instead of building that Alpine resort, let's build a convention center, and we will tie a new moderate resort to it and make it one big complex. And with that, Coronado Springs was born. Now, of course, this being Disney, they couldn't just say, well, we needed a hotel to attach to the convention center and that's the story. No, no, no. The Imagineers came up with a lovely story about a gentleman named Juan Francisco. You may already be familiar with the story of Francisco de Coronado, who left Mexico in search of the 7 lost cities of gold. But the story you did not hear was about Juan Francisco, who followed in his footsteps, also searching for his riches in gold, but instead what he found was the ruins of an ancient Mayan pyramid. He continued his quest for gold, but he never found it. He did, however, document the location of this pyramid, and his relatives, after his death, decided they were going to go on an adventure to find this pyramid. They loved it so much, they decided to create a settlement here, and thus Coronado Springs was born. You can actually find that pyramid right now as the stunning backdrop to the swimming pool at this resort. It's actually one of my favorite pools in all of Disney World, including a lot of the deluxe resorts. I love how that pyramid looks. They did an amazing job with it. It's basically the focal point of their entire recreational area over there, which they call the dig site. In addition to the pool, you're going to find volleyball and some playgrounds, but for the most part, this resort has kind of just the basic amenities in terms of recreation. You're not going to find crazy fun things like fishing excursions. Here, it's just things like the arcade and the fitness club, the pool, the playground, that sort of basic things that you find at almost all of the different Disney World resorts. And the reason for that, of course, is because the core of this hotel is that convention center, and a lot of the folks who come to stay here are folks coming for those conventions. Now, what do you need when you're making really big deals? Of course, you need a nice meal to make those big deals over. So Disney added a ton of dining options to this resort. There are 10 different places to grab a bite to eat or a drink, which makes this the moderate resort with the most dining options. It's actually more dining options than you find at most of the deluxe resorts. So if you're a big foodie, you want to have lots of options to eat, this is a great resort for you to pick. One interesting thing about the dining here, though, most of these places are not run by Disney. There are a few places here that are run by Disney, most notably Toledo, which you find on the top floor of Gran Destino Tower. They do tapas and steak and traditional Spanish favorites. It's a really beautiful restaurant. It's actually one of the most beautiful table service restaurants in any of the resorts, and you have stunning views of Disney World from that top floor. The food there is really good as well, and I actually think it offers a really great value, especially when you compare it to the prices of some of the other high-end restaurants at the different Disney resorts on property. Next door to Toledo, you'll find the surrealist Dahlia Lounge. This lounge is inspired by the time Disney spent with Salvador Dali. They actually had a great friendship, and they even made a film together that you can see on Disney Plus. This bar is kind of an homage to that movie and the work that they did together. But as I mentioned, most of the dining here is not run by Disney, which is kind of unique. I think when Disney was creating this convention-based resort, they knew they were going to need a lot of dining options, so they reached out for help from the folks who actually do all of the different Mexican restaurants at Epcot. So if you're at the Epcot Pavilion, the same folks that do the restaurant and dining options there are the ones that you'll find doing most of the restaurants here at Coronado Springs. You've got Maya Grill, which is where you're going to find traditional Mexican favorites. This is one of our favorite spots to get Mexican food. I like it even better than the Mexican sit-down restaurants over in Epcot. It's really good. They also run the quick service here, Mercado del Coronado. My favorite thing to get there, unsurprisingly, is the Mexican-inspired bowls. What I like about this quick service is because it's not run by Disney, they kind of have a wider variety of options and some of the things that you won't find at a lot of the other Disney-run quick service restaurants on property. If you're looking for a relaxing place along the water to grab a bite to eat, Three Bridges is a really cool spot. It's essentially at the center of Three Bridges in the middle of the lagoon here at this resort. I love just sitting at one of those waterside tables and taking in the views of the resort while I enjoy a drink and some light bites to eat. In addition to those spots, you're going to find some lovely bars, cafes, coffee shops. There is so much to eat and drink here, and if that's something you care a lot about in picking your resort, this is one to put on your short list. The other thing that Coronado Springs really excels at is the variety of rooms that they offer here. You can find everything from old school cabana rooms, which is sort of the original rooms that were here at this resort, all the way up to very fancy suites that are in the new Gran Destino Tower. So this resort is essentially broken up into 4 distinct areas. You've got the cabanas, which is kind of a beachy Mexican coastal town vibe. Then you've got the ranchos, which are a little bit more of a southwestern vibe. You've got the casitas, which are right next door to the convention centers. If you're looking at one of those preferred rooms when you're booking, you're probably going to end up here in the casitas. And last but certainly not least, you have Gran Destino Tower, which Disney built long after they first built this resort. So this was a recent addition. The great thing about the tower is that this resort is kind of sprawling, but if you stay in that tower, everything is really central for you, so you don't have a lot of walking to get back to your room. The tower rooms are, however, very different from the other rooms at this resort. They have a more clean, modern feel. For me, I don't like them quite as much because I don't feel like they have as much character and Disney charm. There are a few little hidden Mickeys here and there, but on the whole, these rooms are really about giving you a more businessy vibe. So if you're staying here as a business traveler and you don't want to feel like you're in the middle of Disney World, you want to feel like you're at a more business-friendly hotel, this is probably the room type you want to choose. Now, over in the cabanas, the casitas, and the ranchos, those rooms for the most part are all very similar, and they do have a little bit more Disney charm to them. I find them to be very comfortable, spacious rooms. I don't like them quite as much as the ones at Port Orleans, but I definitely like them more than the ones over at Caribbean Beach. So I'd say in terms of the quality of these rooms, it's kind of right there in the middle. But they do have a lot of charm to them that I kind of wish there was a little bit more of that charm in those tower rooms. That said, the tower also brings the option of some pretty amazing suites. I've never had occasion to stay in one of the presidential suites, for example, but those are the largest rooms you can get in the moderate resort category. They have 2 bedrooms, so if you've got a big group coming and you want to stay moderate, that is the #1 spot to pick. They also have some suites over in the casitas section, so there are suites there, and then the most expensive suites are going to be the ones here in Gran Destino. The bad news is those suites book up very quickly. When companies book conventions, a lot of times they'll put their top executives in those suites. So if you want to stay in them, you probably need to book those suites well in advance of your visit. As far as shopping goes, the gift shop here is Panchitos. And if you need a little cocoa souvenir or a Coronado Springs inspired gift, this is the spot where you're going to find it. Another great thing about this resort, there's just so many little spots where you can get away and maybe read a book, or if you're here for business, get some work done. There's lots of spots where you can sit down and plug in your computer. If you're doing one of those visits where you're trying to mix business with pleasure, this is the perfect resort to do it. As far as transportation goes, this is probably the weakest link for this resort because you only have access to the bus. The one bright spot is this is one of the hubs if you want to go to Blizzard Beach. So if you're planning to come here during the times of the year when Blizzard Beach is open and you think you might be spending a lot of time there at that water park, this is a great resort for that because it's actually right down the road. You could even walk over there if you wanted to, but lots of folks have to come to this resort to transfer to go to Blizzard Beach. Well, the sun is about to set on our moderate resort adventure, but we have one more moderate resort to talk about, and that is the cabins at Fort Wilderness. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to make it over there today, but I'm headed to the Magic Kingdom tomorrow, and that is the perfect way to visit Fort Wilderness because you can take a boat from right in front of Magic Kingdom over to the best spot in Fort Wilderness. So now let's use the magic of editing to take you forward through space and time to tomorrow, where we'll meet up at the boat dock and head off to Fort Wilderness. Let's go. We are here now at the boat launch for Magic Kingdom, and we are about to take a boat over to Fort Wilderness. And obviously, that is one of the huge perks of this resort. The fact that you can take a relaxing boat ride from your resort to Magic Kingdom, that is pretty hard to beat. And this is the only resort on our list today that gives you that option. Well, the boat is about to pull up right now, so let's hop aboard and I'll see you guys at Fort Wilderness. The cabins at Fort Wilderness are definitely the oddballs in the moderate resorts category. For one, they got added to this list long after they were created. The Fort Wilderness Resort was actually created a couple months after Magic Kingdom opened. So this is one of the oldest resorts on property, but it wasn't added to the moderate resort list until a lot later. Even though the cabins cost about the same as one of the less expensive deluxe resort rooms, Disney still considers this a moderate resort because the cabins sleep as many as 6 people. In fact, if your party includes a young child under the age of 3, you can even up that number to 7. The other unusual thing about this resort being on the moderates list is it may not be a moderate resort anymore after September. So currently, you can only book the existing cabins until the end of September, and that's because they're rolling out some brand new cabins that are going to replace all of these, and those new cabins are going to be part of Disney Vacation Club. They're really modern looking. They're a big update from the cabins that are there now. It also appears they're going to be a little bit more expensive than the cabins that are there now. It's not clear, however, if they're still going to be considered moderate resorts. So even if you're not a member of Disney Vacation Club, you can still rent these like any other room at Disney World. You just pay cash as opposed to Disney Vacation Club points. But all of the different DVC resorts, including these new cabins, get the same benefits as a deluxe resort. Things like access to extended evening hours. So the big question is whether or not Disney is still going to consider these new cabins to be moderates, or are they going to be added to the deluxe tier? Who knows? Maybe they're going to be the first ever Disney Vacation Club moderate resorts, but we don't know the answer to that yet. For right now, though, the cabins that are here are going to be here through the end of September. So if you're coming before then, this is what you'd be booking. We'll definitely do a video on those new cabins when they open up. So if you want to see that video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and ring that bell, and that way you'll be notified whenever that new video comes out. The current cabins are among our favorite places to stay in all of Walt Disney World. They are so cozy and charming. They're really spacious. And then, of course, you've got the benefits of a full kitchen, including a dishwasher. That is a huge luxury to have when you're at a Disney World resort, let me tell you. They also have lovely porches and charcoal grills if you want to grill out. Plus, there is no resort that is more peaceful than Fort Wilderness. You'll see all kinds of wildlife. It feels more like you're at a national park than at Disney World. And if you're looking for great recreation options beyond the parks, Fort Wilderness is second to none. Lots of people come here just to enjoy Fort Wilderness. They don't even bother going into the parks. This is their vacation. You've got horseback riding, archery lessons, and fishing. You can rent canoes or kayaks and paddle down the river that runs along this resort. There are 2 pools, and while every resort does offer a campfire for roasting marshmallows, this one is the only one that has a full-fledged campfire sing-along show that is hosted by none other than Chip and Dale. That show is no extra charge. That is just included with your resort stay here, and it is one of the coolest amenities at any Disney World resort. You can also rent bikes or bring your own, which is a great way to get around this resort because it is way too big to explore on foot. Lots of folks rent golf carts to get around, and if you're here around Christmas or Halloween, one of the other perks of having a golf cart is you can ride around and check out the amazing decorations. The folks who stay here go all out for Christmas and Halloween. They even have decorated golf cart parades that go through the resort. If you can possibly arrange your stay to be during those times of the year, it is an amazing place to be. There are so many recreational activities available here that it's kind of impossible to list them all in a video like this, but probably the most unique offering, you can unleash your inner Wild West prospector and pan for gems. How cool is that? As for dining, they used to have a traditional table service restaurant, but that actually closed recently so that they could expand their quick service option. They also expanded Crockett's Tavern, which is one of the more popular bars at Disney World property. They have really delicious moonshine drinks as well as tasty bar food on offer. Our favorite is probably the fried green tomato sandwich. It has a delicious remoulade sauce. You definitely want to ask for extra to dip your fries in. It is really good. But even though they got rid of the traditional table service restaurant here, you'll find a delicious sit-down meal at the legendary Hoop-Dee-Doo Musical Review. This dinner show is arguably the best show in all of Walt Disney World. Even if you're not staying at the fort, it's worth taking the boat over to catch this show. You just want to make sure you book your tickets way in advance because they do fill up fast. In fact, if you're lucky, you might even see Eric up there on the stage. We've been to see this show a few times, and twice Eric has gotten pulled up to be part of the show. As for transportation, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. So the good news is, of course, there is that amazing boat that takes you back and forth to Magic Kingdom. The bad news is you might actually have to take a bus to get to that boat. You also might have to take a bus to get to any other park or to get to the gift shop or the pool or pretty much anywhere because this resort is so massive. I'm really conflicted about transportation here because as much as I love that boat, and a lot of times I'll just take that boat to ride over here for fun. I love it that much. But unless you have one of those golf carts or your bike, you're gonna rely on buses to get you everywhere, and in some cases, buses to get you to other buses. So that is definitely a big downside to this resort. And I did mention that you may have to take the bus to get to the gift shop. There are actually 2 of them, so you might be close enough to one of them that you can walk, but the good news is these are some of the best gift shops in all of Disney World. They have the most exclusive resort-specific merchandise at these shops, and both of these gift shops are really big. You can also find really unusual things here, like firewood or things for lighting your grill, charcoal, stuff like that. But my favorite things to shop for, of course, are the things that are themed to this resort, and there are tons of them. So now we've come to the moment of the video we've all been waiting for. It is time to rank these resorts and pick the winner. Who is going to take home the title of the best moderate resort in all of Walt Disney World. Just like we did with the value resorts video, we've made a handy dandy grid where we're gonna pick the winner and runner up in a variety of different categories. Gold Star is worth 2 points. The runner-up Silver Star is worth 1. And we also have some new categories to add to the grid. Since the lovely scenery and ambiance of the resort is so important when it comes to these moderate resorts, we've added that as a new category. And also, the category that used to be called Best Pool, we're kind of expanding that now. It's about more than pools when you're at these resorts, so we're changing that to Best Recreation. But let's start off by getting down to the bottom line. How much are these amazing resorts going to cost you when you come to visit? We're going to look at all the different rack rates for these resorts, and we're going to use that to determine which one represents the best value. Over at Caribbean Beach, you're going to find a nightly rate range of anywhere from $268 to $582. It's important to note these are the rack rates before any discounts are applied. Typically, the rack rate you're going to find here is around $370. Over at Coronado Springs, the nightly rate range is $260 all the way up to a whopping $2,385. That, of course, is for those fancy presidential suites. The typical rate for a standard room, however, is around $325. At Port Orleans French Quarter, the nightly rate ranges from $289 up to $533. Typically, though, we find them for about $350. At Port Orleans Riverside, the range goes from $289 up to $518, so just a little below French Quarter, but we usually find those about the same price as well, around $350. Fort Wilderness cabins go for a nightly rate range of $466 up to $938. I'd say typical, though, is about $550, and keep in mind that does sleep 6 or 7. So as we look at all those numbers, it does appear the best value is available for you over at Coronado Springs. That one's going to get the Gold Star. We're going to give a Silver Star tie to Port Orleans Riverside and Port Orleans French Quarter. They each get 1 point each. Our next category is Best Dining, and this one was really tough for these moderate resorts because there are so many great dining options at all these different hotels. That said, there were clearly 2 hotels that had way more dining options than the others. They also had some really high-end dining options. Those, of course, were Caribbean Beach and Coronado Springs. But Caribbean Beach really only has all those extra dining options if you consider the Riviera as being part of that resort area, since it didn't seem fair to give Caribbean Beach full credit for restaurants that are technically at another resort. We did give the Gold Star to Coronado Springs. It has a bunch of really amazing restaurants that are all its own, and they range all the way from fine dining down to quick service. So Coronado Springs gets the Gold Star. Caribbean Beach is going to have to settle for silver on this one. Next up is Best Rooms, and in this case, I do think Fort Wilderness has an unfair advantage. All of their rooms are cabins. They're spacious, they're cozy, they're adorable. So definitely Gold Star goes to Fort Wilderness, even though it's not a very fair competition. The Silver Star, however, was a lot more difficult. I love a lot of the rooms at these different resorts. That said, I definitely had to give it to Port Orleans Riverside just because of the wide variety of rooms that they offer. Plus, those royal suites are really incredible, and there's really nothing else like them in the moderate resort category. So Silver Star is well-deserved and goes to Port Orleans Riverside. Next up is Best Recreation, the category that was formerly just limited to pools, and I think it's no surprise here. The Gold Star is definitely going to Fort Wilderness. There is just so much stuff to do at this resort. We couldn't even list all of it in this video. The Silver Star was a little bit harder, but not really. I mean, Port Orleans Riverside has so many cool things to do over there, from carriage rides to boat rides to fishing. There is just a ton of stuff you can do over at Port Orleans Riverside, and the fact that it's so close to Port Orleans French Quarter means that you kind of get the benefit of 2 different resort pools to choose from. Our next category is Best Transportation, and for this one, it's not even close. The Skyliner makes Caribbean Beach the ultimate choice if transportation is what you care about. In fact, it's such a big deal, we're not even giving a Silver Star in this category. Gold Star goes to Caribbean Beach. Our next category is Best Disney Theming slash Best for Disney Fans, and this one is a lot easier to pick over the value resorts just because the Disney theming is really over the top there. At these resorts, as I'm sure you've noticed in this video, things are a lot more toned down. That said, there are still a lot of charming Disney surprises to be found at these resorts, if you know where to look. For this one, we gave the silver star to Coronado Springs. There are a lot of lovely little Disney touches throughout this resort. You can find some hidden Mickeys in your room. There's some references to the Three Caballeros, but probably the thing that put it over the top for us was actually Dahlia Lounge. So this is not themed in the way that you might initially think of Disney theming. There's no Donalds and Mickeys and Goofies everywhere. This one is themed to Walt himself. I feel like this is a really unique Disney theming. It's a little bit more grown-up Disney theming, and it makes sense that this would be the kind of Disney theming you'd find at an upscale, moderate resort. The gold star, however, is much more traditional Disney theming. We had to give it to Port Orleans, Riverside, and French Quarter. We're throwing them together for this because they do share a lot of theming elements between the two of them. You've got everything from Mickey-shaped beignets to the royal rooms that are just filled with Disney characters. You've got lots of references to the Princess and the Frog. If you're a lover of Disney animation, there is a lot to love in these two resorts. So these were an easy pick for best resort for Disney lovers slash best Disney theming. But now it's time for the flip side of that. Which resort is best for folks who are not as into over-the-top Disney theming? If you're looking for an escape from the Disney vibe, definitely your top pick is going to be Fort Wilderness. It's really like an escape from Disney World altogether. You can really just commune with nature here. If you're in those cabins, there are some very subtle Disney touches, but for the most part, you just feel like you're in a really cool cabin in the woods. The runner-up for this one, oddly enough, is also one of the winners for Best Disney Theming. It's odd how that worked out, but strangely enough, Coronado Springs is also a really great resort if you're not into the Disney theming. The reason for that, of course, is because this is a convention center resort. So Disney did do a good job of making sure there were some rooms available, specifically those in the tower, that have very minimal Disney theming. Plus, the pool itself just sort of feels like you're at a Mayan pyramid. It doesn't feel over-the-top Disney. So I would say while there are a lot of Disney things to find at this resort, if you want to disconnect from that and just pretend you're not at Disney World, you're probably going to have a great time at Coronado Springs as well. Our next category is best for larger groups, and I gotta be honest, initially I just thought this was gonna go to cabins at Fort Wilderness. They're all cabins, that's great for a group. But when you think about it, you actually have more options for a larger group over at Coronado Springs. Those go all the way up to 2-bedroom suites. Now, having said that, if you want one of those 2-bedroom suites, it's going to cost way more than any other moderate resort. You're basically in deluxe resort territory, but that's not what we're ranking here. We're ranking what is best for a larger group. Technically speaking, there are more options available to you at Coronado Springs. So that one does get the gold star, but I feel like it is a really close second here for cabins at Fort Wilderness. There's another new category that I want to add in here that is specific to these moderate resorts, and that is best room accessibility. Now, what I mean by that is some of these resorts actually make it relatively easy for you to get from the heart of the resort, where the lobby and the restaurants and everything are, to all of the different rooms. And if you think about it, that really isn't an option at the value resorts. All the value resorts are pretty spread out. There's not going to be options if you don't want to have a long way to go to your room. But here at the moderates, we do have a couple of those options. In this case, you got to give the gold star to Coronado Springs because you can choose a tower room. And if you're in that tower, everything is right there for you. All your restaurants, you've got elevators that take you to your room. All the hallways are not super long, so it's not like these other resorts where you're gonna have to trek all the way across the resort potentially to get to your room. You can have everything nice, tight, and together right there in that tower. The runner-up for this is going to be French Quarter. That's just because this is a really small resort compared to the others. Even if you're at the room that is farthest away from the lobby, it's not going to be too long of a trek, especially compared to the other moderate resorts on this list. Our other new category is Most Scenic, Best Scenery, and I really went back and forth a lot on this one between Fort Wilderness and Port Orleans Riverside. In the end, I did decide to give it to Riverside just because of the variety that you find there. You've got the swampy beauty of the bayou, you've got the horse-drawn carriages taking you through that plantation home style over on the other end of the resort. You've got Riverside itself with that scenic water wheel. There are just so many picturesque, beautiful spots in this resort. Probably my favorite is actually that enormous oak tree over at Old Man Island. I just love relaxing over there in one of the hammocks. Whenever I think of Port Orleans Riverside, I think of swinging in those hammocks on Old Man Island and just how peaceful and relaxing it is. So for me, best scenery, most scenic, the place I just want to spend some time soaking up the atmosphere is Port Orleans Riverside. Definitely a close second, though, is Fort Wilderness here. As we mentioned before, being at Fort Wilderness is kind of like being at one of the national parks. So if that's your vibe, you're probably going to love the scenery here even more than over at Riverside. But for me, I'm just more of a Riverside guy, so that one gets the gold star. And the final category that may or may not matter to you, but to me, this does matter. I care about having a great gift shop to peruse when I'm hanging out at my resort. And the runner-up here is going to be Fort Wilderness, because Fort Wilderness does have two really great gift shops, and they have the widest variety of merch. That said, what they do not have are actual animatronic Disney characters in their gift shop. So the winner here has to be Port Orleans Riverside. That gift shop is just over the top amazing. It's so cool. They also have some really cool things there. I mean, you can get stuff to make beignets, you can get hot sauce for your jambalaya and gumbo when you get back home, but let's be honest, the thing that puts it over the top are the animatronic ducks. And now we've awarded all of our gold and silver stars, which means it is time to crown the winner. Who is the best moderate resort in all of Walt Disney World? I'm wearing the ears for Fort Wilderness because I really thought it was going to be Fort Wilderness. But when you do the math, edging out Fort Wilderness is Coronado Springs. If you think about it, it does make sense because Coronado Springs has a ton of amazing restaurants. Really, it's as close as you can get to a deluxe resort without being at a deluxe resort, so I get it. That said, I have a soft spot in my heart for Fort Wilderness, also for Port Orleans. I love that resort too. So what about you? Were you surprised by the winner? Were you rooting for someone else all along? Well, the good news is you can take this grid, you can decide which categories matter most to you and your group, and you can pick a winner that is just for you and find the resort that is perfect for your next Disney World visit. Before we go, I want to give a huge thank you to our Patreon family. Thanks so much for supporting what we do here. There's no way we could make videos like this without the support of Patreons like you, so thank you. If you'd like to join them and get access to special bonus content, head on over to patreon.com/earscouts. I also want to thank all of you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, if you found it helpful, do us a favor and give it a like. It helps our channel a lot. And then, if you enjoyed it, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and ring that bell. That way you'll be notified whenever new videos like this come out. Until next time, don't forget to think happy thoughts, everybody. We'll see you again real soon.